Well, good morning or nearly good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to Live with Roger and Pascal. This is our bonus audio and video show. It's a sister show to Two Geeks and a Marketing Podcast. And welcome to Mr. Pascal Fintoni.
Well, thank you very much. And yes, thank you very much for joining us live or on replay. So, as you mentioned, this is the companion, the sister to the audio video magazine. And listen, I love preparing, our long form version, of looking at marketing through different lenses. But there's something nice to just relax a bit and take it slow with this particular live section. We have three segments, as some of you will know: Marketing Made Simple, Speaker's Corner, and of course, Film Marketing Revisited.
Yeah, I think the thing is when you do the main show, when we do the main show, that's obviously pre-recorded and it's edited. This one, it feels a little bit more relaxed, as you say. It gives us chance to sort of really reflect upon some of the things that we've talked about in the past, perhaps bring a new perspective to some of those issues that we discussed in past shows. The world changes so fast. There are new innovations every day. There's new technology every day, new AI breakthroughs, new strategies. So it's always nice to reflect and look back and introduce some new thoughts and new ideas.
Yeah, and this is about being practical, I think, with as well with this live session. So we answer questions very precisely. We share tactics and we share kind of our own experience. And I think it's just a lovely thing to do. So yeah, thank you again for joining us live or on replay.
And our first segment, as you said, Pascal, is Marketing Made Simple. And of course, this is so close to my heart. I've spent most of my career championing keeping marketing simple. And unfortunately, we live in a world, as we've said, where we're absolutely blessed with such amazing technology. And yet, unfortunately, we do seem to make things incredibly complicated. And maybe that's as a result of the fact that we have access to all this technology and we've got nobody there to keep us in check. So it's our job really to help people look through all the complexity and find the simple messages, find the simple techniques, find the simple strategies. And this week, you're going to be talking to us a little bit about websites, aren't you? And the visitors to websites.
Yes, thank you very much. So, very much something that we started last week when I was asking you to look at the circle of simplicity, which is a big part of your book, 𝗏 Marketing Plans. I wanted to kind of highlight a segment of our book that I wrote with Johnny Ross called We're Proud, the 5-step roadmap to feeling proud of
There
your
it is behind my
website.
head. Look,
Yes,
it's in my
I took
bookcase.
I took it from that bookcase where your book is also alongside, this one. And we essentially in the book we've done five what we call the executive briefing, five things people should be looking at to improve not just actually their website from the visitor's point of view, but also the enjoyment of running your website. I think, to your point earlier, Roger, there's a lack of enjoyment now in marketing. There's a lack of enjoyment in the content marketing pursuit, but also running a website and feeling proud of that website experience. And the one challenge that I do in executive briefing number 2, I talk about the term visitor and saying, we use it willy-nilly. We sometimes just, look at the stats on the dashboards and we look at, keyword research and so on. But I want to explore what we mean behind the term visitor because it's so, in a way, meaningful that it's become meaningless over time. Now, what I'm about to share has taken me decades to understand because, of course, you go through your own journey as a website creator and manager. But I was thinking, if people were to hear us talk as marketers about them as website visitors, I think they'd be disappointed. They'd think, well, this is not who I am. This is not what I do and so on. So what I've done over time as a trick of the mind to inspire you to look at your website from the perspective of a first-time visitor, I've come up with a concept I've called the 4 types of website visitors. And to help me keep the information right, thank you very much. I'm going to ask you to share the visual. So it's quite busy. So let me take you and our viewers and listeners through this. So if I start with the X and Y axis, you'll see that the Y axis talks about making a rational or an emotional decision to engage with the website content and offers. And then the X axis is about preferences. Do you prefer details or do you prefer an overview? And this is frankly, boring from retail marketing, psychology of buying, and that kind of thing. So there's nothing new in there. But then what you'll see in 4 different quadrants, I've got the 4 types of website visitors, and this is a reminder about the richness and the diversity of people that would go on your website. So if I start at the very top there, top left, an individual who would make a rational decision to engage with you and prefers details would be called the investigator. This is the label I came up with. And the investigator has a preference in terms of information, which is information that answers the following question: how do you do what you do? Because all too often what people do is make a statement of fact about what they do. But what is it of interest to that particular, visitor is to understand the process, the thoughtfulness behind your offer, your products and services. So how do you do what you do is almost a question that you want to be seen answering throughout the website. And essentially it's about the art of being explicit, I would say, Roger, as opposed to being implicit. If you work your way down the quadrant, then towards a more emotional, perhaps intuitive way of doing business, but still favoring details, and we have the relationship builder. And this is a lovely one because their concern in terms of trusting you and trusting your claims is to understand going to look after me. They want to understand who's behind the business. You can no longer, that's something that you and I have mentioned time and time again, hide behind a brand, a logo, and some vague statements. They're looking for that people message. And it's not just, by the way, the about section or the meet the team that people do very, very quickly and then they will look at again, but actually everywhere throughout the website, can we have can we make sure the team members, particularly customer facing team members, are present? Can we make sure that, for example, the blog articles have a clear author? Can we make sure that the case studies are written in a first person, stuff like that? So that's an important one to go. Let's move along then to the still making an emotional, intuitive decision to deal with you, but perhaps favoring an overview. And here we have the dreamer. And this one is a lovely kind of archetype because what they're looking for is, don't give me the details. I'm not like the investigator. As you can see, they are rightly opposite to that. I want to understand and imagine what success looks like working with you. Give me an idea of where the end point is. Give me an idea of, as you, the contractor, the supplier, the kind of advisor, walk into the sunset, what has happened to me? How have things changed? And you and I can then delve your time allotted storytelling. But we will not. Today is not the time for this. But the dreamer needs to understand more about imagining a different future for themselves. And this is where visual presentations, images, case studies, indeed, a video, and that kind of things, help somebody imagine a different future using your services. And let's close then on the final kind of archetype. We're into the rational and overview the negotiator. Why should I choose you is their key questions. And what they are concerned about is your performance. And this is someone that will not be satisfied with claims without evidence. So what can you do to actually storytell and evidence that what you do is indeed of benefits to others? And sometimes you can make a very clear, explicit statement around your qualifications and around essentially some of the methodologies. And sometimes you'll have to add to that. But ultimately, what you want to be sure is to avoid a situation where you design a website that suits your preference. And that's really at the heart of this system here. For example, let's say that I'm working with a client, and when it's all said and done, their preference, Roger, would to be more of a dreamer. When they go on website, what they like is to know the end point. If you look at the diagram, therefore, their blind spot would be actually what I called, the investigator. And the risk for all of us is sometime, because of time limitations, perhaps too many cooks as well, we design a website that suits our preference. And sometimes we can miss one or two of the other preferences. That means that some visitors are left wanting from their website experience. So that's, a small kind of extract from the book, but it's a very important one because ultimately, if you could, the best website for your customers would be designed by the customers themselves. We can't do that. Therefore, we have to pretend to walk in their shoes from time to time.
Yeah, I mean, this is a basic principle and a basic flaw in being a marketing person is that you often effectively overlay your own desires onto those of your customers. I think they call it market orientation, don't they? Or
Mm,
Mark Ritson has called it market orientation before. So if you like red cars, then your assumption is that everybody likes red cars, and you might go and create red cars and miss out on all the people who like yellow cars and blue cars. So you absolutely vitally have to make sure that you are uh, uh, listening to what your customers want and responding to that. But are you saying that your website needs to have sections, separate sections for these different personality types, or are you just saying that you effectively have to cope, you have to tailor the message on each part to reflect each of those personality types. So it could be one page, but you've got to make sure that it includes the information that the investigators like and the dreamers, etc.
That's great, and that you could use that actually for a proposal as much as you could do for a presentation, and really because websites have different web pages, you can afford to kind of spread the information out. But really, for me, it's important to avoid a situation where again, because you like details, you give a lot of details without giving the overviews. Because you like to know about the people, you forget to also mention about the competence. There's all sort of kind of things. So the system can be used as a checklist if you want to start a new website, or if you have a website, you've been running a website for a while, you can use this to find a blind spot or some of the information that could be lacking across the website.
I think, again, a lot of people probably don't think about these things because we're still bombarded with your website has to be SEO friendly. It's got to hit the keywords. It's got to have the right metadata. You want to rank on Google. These days, you want to make sure you get picked up by AI and all of that sort of thing. And yet, these are really important emotional triggers that you need to ensure that you've covered to to become engaging to different types of people. It's funny, there isn't a day goes by where I don't get some email from some person somewhere who purports to be still an SEO expert, and it always amuses me because the email will be something like, "Quite like your website, but it isn't doing very well." I think, isn't that a great way to engage with people? "Hey, your website's really crap. Let me help you make it better." Your initial reaction to that, maybe it's the dreamer in me, is to say, "Well, I'm not I'm not interested in what your opinion is then. Off you go." But you never get emails from people saying, "Do you know what? You're actually not targeting each of the personality types of the people that you buy." It's always about SEO. It's always about colors. It's
Mm.
always about design. But if you miss out on these emotional things, then it could be just as bad as not having the right SEO.
Absolutely. And just quickly closing, because I get those emails too. And somebody thinks, do you check my website or my LinkedIn profile? Do you realize who you're talking to? Why is it that all those alleged SEO experts only have a at gmail.com address when they email you? I want to understand that, Roger Edwards.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so let's move on to our second section, which of course is Speaker's Corner. And this is where we talk about the craft of doing presentations, either at conferences, could be webinars, could be workshops. And each month we just talk about ways you can improve your presentations, ways that you can engage your audience, whether it's through PowerPoint, whether it's through video. And this week we're going to talk about PowerPoint, aren't we? And
Mhm.
creating slides. And sometimes, we've all heard the phrase "death by PowerPoint." What are your views on creating slides?
Oh, do you know, that's interesting because recently I was complimented about my slide design, which I was pleased because I spent a lot of time on the design, as in the look and feel more than the content. And this lady actually came to me and said, you know what, on reflection, I think I spent far too much time on PowerPoint. It feels like I'm going nowhere. Have you got any tips to save time or make it less laborious? And my reaction was, yeah, don't start with PowerPoint, which seems obvious because I know that's the end point. You want to eventually have a number of visual aids to support maybe your training course or your speech or your internal communication. But for me, and perhaps because of my work in video production, I doodle first. I sketch first. I have a business card which is now really looking very old, where I just go across along the lines and create little rectangles on a blank piece of paper, and I can imagine myself being there. And really, what I look for, really to begin with, are the chapter slides, as I call them. So, what are the key elements that I'd be looking for? And then next, I look at the activity. So, in the context of a course, I look at the exercise of the activity. In the context of a speech, I look at the key message. And then I say, well, if I want people to understand that, or if I want people to do that, what is the explanation that has to come just before? And I kind of build, the storyboard, I think would be perhaps the right term to do it that way. And then for me, very selfishly, I want something that inspires me. So I look for photography, I look for layouts and so on, and then I build the PowerPoint last. But I think, the message that I would share, and I'm sure you'll agree, imagine for a moment that there's going to be a massive power cut and you can't use PowerPoint. It's happened to me, by the way, at the hotel in Leeds. It was a fire actually alarm. We had to leave and be in a car park for most of the morning. So I want people to also imagine that you must be able to do without, but you will be able to do without because you understand the segment, the sections, and the activities. But that's kind of the way I go about it. I don't know if you have a different way.
No, no, I fully agree with that. I mean, I think perhaps a lot of people, if especially if you've worked in a big corporate, if somebody says to you, put together a speech, I reckon most people will immediately go to PowerPoint and open it up and use PowerPoint to create the speech. So they'll start with a title slide, then they'll have heading, bullet point, bullet point, bullet point, and then another heading, bullet point, bullet point, bullet point. And they use that, and almost PowerPoint becomes a script. And the danger of that is that whilst they're doing the presentation, they may be constantly looking at it, or if there's a comfort
Yeah.
monitor down here, they'll be looking at that. And PowerPoint then becomes your own crutch as opposed to something to help the audience understand your messages. Um, Now, I have to hold my hands up and say that when I started my corporate career, that's exactly what I did. But ironically, I had an experience probably sounds very similar to yours. I was at an event. I think this one was actually in Newcastle, funnily enough,
All right.
and it was one of those really quite dreadful events where you sit in a room at a conference venue, and throughout the day, you effectively do the same presentation about 7 times, and it's the audience that revolves. So they come in and go out, and you do the presentation, takes 20 minutes, 30 minutes, however long. Then another load of people come in, and by the end of the day, your brain has completely lost track of who you've said what to and whether you've said this, that, and the other. And I remember that in my room, as soon as I literally started the first of 7 repetitions of this presentation, the bulb and the projector blew up and made quite a big bang,
Yeah,
actually.
they do, don't they? Yeah.
And thought, crikey, what's going on here? And of course, the conference organizers didn't have a replacement bulb for this particular type of projector. So I had to literally do that presentation 7 times that day without any
Wow.
slides at all. Now I used a flip chart. The
Sure.
first was a bit rough and ready, but by the end of the day, I'm thinking, "Do you know what? I actually didn't really need the slides, did I?" And
Mm.
that was the turning point for me. So ever since then, if I ever start to do a presentation, it's always write the messages, write the takeaways, the stories, the segments, and then after all of that's done, that's when you then go in and say, are there any slides at all that I could put up on the screen which would support what I've said? And I think that's such a better way of doing it. I'm not saying that there aren't great presenters out there who start with PowerPoint, but I do think that personally, and I think your experience reflects the same thing, is if you craft what you want to say first and then see how PowerPoint can enhance it, then that's the best way to do it.
I found so a couple of people I found really inspiring. So there was someone that did a presentation. They were using PowerPoint, but the only time they brought PowerPoint on screen was to recap what they had shared. So they
Yes.
just a series of recap slides, you could say them, and they were really well made. Actually, they were not just bullet points because you and I actually, as part of the audio video magazine, have looked at bullet points and how they would put someone to sleep. So almost like it's like a response. You see bullet points, you just you turn away and look at your phone. So I've seen people do that really, really well. I've seen people actually do something very interesting where they actually press B on the keyboard and switch off, the connection between the laptop and the projector, and there's
Mhm.
no more anything to look at on the screen or on the big flat screen TV as well. So I've seen people do that where they want to get your attention, and then they bring it back up again, so they have full control over that. And our pal Simon Raybould does something really superb where he actually asks the audience, "What do you want me to talk about next?" So people choose, and he has those hyperlinks on this slide where you can move on to any segment of this presentation. And I must confess, I did steal that once during a training course, but I wasn't as adept as he was. And I was losing track like you of what we'd covered and not covered. So do be careful. But for me, it's that, said, enjoy the creative pursuit of coming up with the ideas, pen and paper, whiteboard, post-its, take the dogs for a walk, whatever works for you. And then the question is, what is the most elegant and simplest and shortest way I can capture this to support me as a speaker and the audience?
I mean, I've done that before where I've actually included black slides within the presentation, so
Yeah, yeah.
effectively it just goes dark. And there was one conference that I made a speech at where the AV person, probably meaning well, thought that there was a problem with the slide presentation, so thought he was helping and went through and deleted all these black slides, thinking that they weren't meant to be there. And of course, when I went up later on to check the slides. And what happened to all my black slides? Oh, I thought it was a mistake, so I took them all out. So fortunately, I had it on a stick, so we put it back in and resurrected it. All right, so Pascal, the last segment of our live show is probably one of my favorite parts because we get to revisit one
Mm.
of the films that we looked at. Now, obviously, in the main show, in Two Geeks and a Marketing Podcast, we spend sometimes 20, 25 minutes talking
If
about
not
the
more, yeah.
film,
Mhm.
if not more, and we go into a deep dive into the marketing. What we do when we look at marketing revisited, film marketing revisited, is really just to pick up on one point that really stood out for us from a particular film marketing campaign. And this month, I've chosen to revisit a film from 2022. It's called The Menu, and it stars Ray Fiennes, Anya Taylor-Joy, and Nicholas Hoult. Now, great film, quite a dark film. It's effectively about a Michelin-starred chef who invites a load of rich people to his island to feed them, and of course, his intention is to murder them all. So it's really quite a dark film. And one of the reasons why I've chosen this is that it's the final of MasterChef Australia tonight. Now, MasterChef Australia is one of Trisha and my wife and I's sort of personal pleasures. MasterChef Australia is completely different to the UK version. So if you can get past all the controversy that we've had with John Turode and Greg Wallace over the last 12 months, MasterChef Australia works a little bit more like The Apprentice. So you start off with 20 people, and then they have all of these challenges and tasks, and they whittle them down until there's only two left. It's not done on a sort of heats basis at the UK version, but it is such an uplifting show, so motivational. There are tears, there's joy and happiness and sadness and all of that sort of thing. And I think it juxtaposes with the theme of this film, which is actually quite dark. But the reason why I just wanted to go back to this is what stood out for me was the one-liners, Pascal, on the posters and in the marketing that they used for this. Now, the main poster, the strapline was painstakingly prepared, brilliant execution. Now, of course, that's a play on words because Ray Fiennes' chef was effectively going to execute his guests. And I think one of the other strap lines was food to die. What was it? A meal to dine for, or something like that. Again, a play on words, and it just brought it home to me again. I think one of the arts that we've lost a little bit again, perhaps as we started to use AI and perhaps become overly reliant upon AI, is we've lost the ability to create a good strapline or a slogan or a one-liner. I don't care whether you call it a strapline or a one-liner or a slogan, but you can use one-liners and slogans in pretty much anything you do. It could be a one-page sales aid for a product. It could be an advert. It could be a headline for an article. It could be, we've already been talking about PowerPoint presentations and making speeches. Whenever I put together a speech for whatever audience it might be, I often try to come up with a slogan to put into that presentation at certain points that they'll remember and they'll take away. You'll remember my engage, don't enrage
Mm.
strapline that was very successful. And the cat on the mat story as well was based around a slogan. And I think that maybe we've just lost the art of doing that. But if you think about it, you'll be able to remember so many slogans, even like it or not, get Brexit done. And of course, I disagree with the whole thing, but you can't get away from the fact that that was just a bit of a genius slogan. Unfortunately, it worked. But we're surrounded by similar things, political, non-political. What are your views on one-liners and slogans, and how do you go about putting them together, Pascal?
Do you know, it made me realize how much I missed that because you and I would have spent quite a bit of time as part of, let's call it the branding pack, to work on this with our clients or with our previous employers. Because if you think about it, our journey was around, understanding the value proposition, all those things, and then extract out of that typically the mark or the logo or the identity. Then usually what you would work on is a strap line, then you would work on the short explainer, then you work on an overview. It's almost like a pyramid effect, of being clearer as people, request more and more information. And I've noticed, particularly when I do work with startup programs, that people are not reminded and told about the importance of, the branding pack is not just, the logo and let's say the website. You have to have a range of intriguing kind of words, and those words that can be placed in so many different ways. So I think you're right. I think we've almost, it's been a casualty of the marketing kind of plate being so busy with so many different things that we have missed the essentials. But I'm a big, massive fan of the strapline. Actually, I do have an activity for my clients where I look at the famous ones. I say, do you see what they've done here? And I kind of work it. But I think your choice of the menu was interesting because so they had not just one strapline, which I thought was very interesting. They had a number of. So it was a campaign actually organized and orchestrated around straplines. I mean, the one that I loved was, a fine place to dine, but they had crossed off the N of dine. So it was a fine place to die, all those things. Movie stars dine here, but the N has been crossed off. But they used it on posters, they use it on social media, they use it on teaser trailers as well. The text was there, but they also, and I had to check our notes because I thought it was false memory, but as part of the PR campaign, they invented a fake restaurant. So essentially a restaurant, and the strap line for the restaurant, which didn't exist, by the way, people then clicked on the link to book a table, and they were taken to the movie website, the menu, and film.co.uk. But the strapline was 5 reasons we're dying to try out London's new restaurant.
I mean, it's fascinating. We could talk about strap lines for the entire 30 minutes of this live show. Um, Maybe we'll go into it in another episode later. But
Hmm,
again, you've got your strap line, but you also need to have sort of the backup statements to go with it. I always remember a very, very well-known marketer who used to work with British Airways many, many years ago, Hamish Taylor, he was called, said, say, once you've got your strapline, and I think the example he used was domestos, um, kills all known germs dead. You then have to have the support statements as to why should people believe that?
that's right,
Well,
yes.
you've got to believe it because it's bleach, because it kills 99% of organisms, viruses, whatever it is. So yes, you need a strap line, but you also need to have the support statements to back it up. And I think that that's probably a discussion for another episode. Well, 30 minutes has flown by, Pascal, as always. It's a real pleasure to talk to you. And in this more sort of relaxed environment, it's given me a few ideas that I think we might put into the next full show, the Two Geeks and a Marketing podcast, which usually lasts for about an hour to an hour 15. But if you've got any thoughts that we've triggered today about presentations, about keeping marketing simple on websites and the personalities of people that visit websites, either drop them down in the comments below on this LinkedIn live post, or just get in touch with us at the YouTube channel, Two Geeks and a Marketing Podcast. Leave us a comment there. We're always delighted to interact with people who are watching and listening to our shows.
Yes, absolutely. And by the way, can we ask people to send us their favorite strap lines? Because we have agreed, without talking to each other properly, that this would be a major part of our next audio video magazine.
Yeah. Do the shake and vac and put the freshness back, Pascal. We shall see you all soon. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening. And we'll see you on the next full version of Two Geeks and a Marketing podcast very, very soon.